I actually had a subordinate call me out and say, hey, you know what? She doesn't trust us. Whenever she gets really under stress, she holds it all herself and doesn't let us do our job. I was like, wow. Okay, so first off, I was like seeing red and I was angry. And then I realized, oh, yeah, I totally do that.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. My name is Anthony Taylor. Strategy and Leadership Podcast is brought to you by SME Strategy. We help teams get aligned and clear on where they want to go and perform at their best. And today, my guest, Jenn Donahue, is a former U.S. Navy captain. Congratulations on your retirement. She just has a USA Today bestseller book, Becoming the Warrior, has a track record of leading people through success. I'm just so grateful to have you on the show today, Jenn. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Congratulations on your book success. At the time of recording, out for about a month, but obviously it's having a huge impact, and your career over 27 years in the Navy, commanding hundreds of troops through really challenging situations. I mean, it's work you've been doing your entire life, and now, writing this book, being able to bring those lessons to people, and that's why you're here. So, that was a little bit about my perspective on you, but you want to fill in the blanks about who you are as a person, as a leader, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I am a 27-year Navy veteran. I served in Iraq. I served in Afghanistan, both active and reserve. I'm an engineer. I'm a speaker. And I just really feel like I have a message that can get out there and can help people. Just be like a little bit better than they are today. That's really what it's all about, is just really helping everybody else.
Thank you for that. I love that. One of the things that I really like doing as I've hit middle age is becoming a golfer. And the thing with golfing, it makes it hard. It's all about the voices within that are telling you to, they're not always helping you make the best. How do you think about that little voice within that might get in the way of us becoming as powerful as we can be as leaders in the field?
We all have those little voices in our head. I actually have two that are probably more nefarious than anything else. So one of them I've nicknamed the mean little voice. So that's the one that's telling you like, hey, maybe you're not really good enough, or, why did you take up golf, even to begin with? So one that's just kind of mean and nagging, and it's just really hard to get rid of. Then there's a second one that I call the sneaky little bastard. And so that's the one that's kind of telling you, hey, we probably should make that really important phone call, but maybe I'll go walk the dog instead. So one that basically is like, what you need to do. That it's like, this is the right thing to do. And you're like, let's go do something else instead. Because that voice is basically protecting you from hearing the word no, or from maybe getting hurt by putting yourself out into the world. So it's like, hey, let's go do something else that's safe so that we don't have to actually try something out of our comfort zone.
So as you think about, obviously, like being in Afghanistan and other, high anxiety places, all of the work that you do in the military is preparing for those situations. One of the things that you did, taking us back into your early stages of career and even as an engineer, how did you work through those voices? How did you train through those things? How did you even have the awareness that these two little people in your brain are talking to you? And how did that support you kind of working through it to be a leader of men and women in the field?
I didn't really hear them that much when I was a lot younger. I was pretty brash. I was like, I'm going to go do this, and don't you tell me no that I can't do it. I'm going to go do it anyway. And so that's how I was. And it wasn't until I started to get a little bit more mature and the stakes started to get a little bit higher that they started to really kind of, hey, by the way, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, or, hey, I don't think you're good enough for that. That's when things really started to ramp up. And what I found was that whenever I was under a really, really stressful situation, I had all of this military training for 19 years. I had been preparing for this. And I basically had a real shock to the system. And those little voices, they just took over. They're like, hey, let's go do something else. And I was completely blindsided by those voices. And it took me a few minutes to try to get back to what was rational and fall back on my training to do what I really needed to do. And so that was really the first time I realized, oh, wow, this is something that I need to get under control.
And so Do you think it's a function of, I mean, you had mentioned higher stakes situation is a function of as you get up into leadership, there's literally more voices that are talking to you because there's more people in your care. But is it a function of, the fact that it is higher stakes, that there's a lot of people on there and then you just have more pressure, I guess it is? Or what's the thing for you?
I really think it's a combination of all of those. So I truly believe that these little voices, what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep you and everybody around you safe. And so if you don't make these decisions, if you don't go and grow, if you don't, you know, get into these situations, like they're pretty silent.
Hmm.
So have you actually ever just kind of been content where you're not trying to do anything new or you don't have any big decisions to make? Do you hear the voices?
It's in different voices saying I'm being lazy or
Okay.
whatever. What are you even doing
Okay.
here?
That's a whole nother, that's other voices. But yeah, so they're not really saying anything because you're not having to go beyond what you feel like you need to do, or you're not making big choices. And so it's when you make those big choices, when you're trying to grow, that's when those voices really start to amp up. And the bigger the choices, the bigger the risk, they just get louder and louder and louder. And
Hmm.
so they're basically proportional to each other.
Got it. So as we think of, like, obviously, our show, we have got people at various stages of their career, some, board, some CEOs, some early stages they go through here. What are some of those techniques or tools that you learned in the military that they could apply, whether it's those big inflection points in their career, or if it's hell, just, getting dressed for the day and trying to like power through the next, like, whatever Friday morning of back-to-backs they have to get through.
Oh, it's so true. So one of the things I really learned is that all of those voices are the negative bias of the brain. Okay, so by the way, I'm actually a big nerd. Like I like to study like why we have these voices and where they come from and how do we get rid of them. And so we have these negative biases. Like we start to think about something: should I do this? Should I not? And the brain automatically goes towards that negative bias. What we need to do is we need to literally train the brain to actually go towards a positive bias.
Yeah.
And the way that we do this is there's several different ways. Is number one, start thinking about what are all of the positive things that you've done already. What is the best thing that you've ever done? What was your win from yesterday? What was the best thing you did? And what you do is you start to remember all these things. And what happens is that over a course of time, you literally remap the synapses in your brain to start to go along those different paths. So whenever you start to think something negative, the brain actually takes a right turn instead of a left turn, and you start to think more positive. And so when you're having those Fridays, when you just realize you have back to back to back meetings, start to think back of all the positive things that have come from those meetings. Maybe you had great conversations. Maybe you got a new sale, whatever that might be. So instead of just thinking, I think this is just going to be a really long, boring day, or like it's just going to grind me down, start to think about, hey, in your past, what has something like this done for you?
Mm. And do you mind if I ask again? Because, like, obviously, in the realm of leadership, driving these things for you, okay, I read like the business books, and of course, you have written one. But going back to like how that practically applies in your history, you're going into or have gone into, arguably, some of the most challenging, literally life and death scenarios. What are the conversations that are had before that? Are you telling folks, hey, everything's going to be okay? Are you telling folks like, okay, let's be mission focused, look out for one another, remember how we practice this? Like, what are those conversations? Are they similar or a little bit different?
It actually is very similar. So, I'm not, I try to be a glass, half full type of person, but whenever you're going into situations like that, you want to get everybody prepared, especially in the military when you're going on these high stakes missions, where you could get shot at and everything else that happens is we basically every single time we go out, and this might seem repetitive, is we go over what exactly we're going to be doing. And then if something happens, what are we going to do? What are our immediate action drills that we're going to be doing? And we go over that so that it's always top of mind, so that if something happens, it's right there. You pull it up and you're able to make the correct decisions in the right amount of time. The same thing can be done in business as well. If you have a big project that you're about to go into, just sit down with your team. Start brainstorming all of those bad things that could happen during the project and start making all of those plans for if this, then that. And what will happen is that your team feels a lot more confident whenever they're going into it because they know, okay, we're going fine, we're going fine. Oh, something happens. Okay, this is exactly what we do. We need to call this person. We need to make this pivot, whatever it might be. And it actually makes things a whole lot more effective.
Mhm. So I hear, the preparation is kind of both scenario planning, the repetition of it, the response of it, and then
Right.
basically both through the test training positive bias and the like what to do in case of scenario A, B, C, D is
Mhm.
to like train your instinct to be able to respond appropriately in those situations. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. And then I think the most important thing out of all of this, and it's what a lot of people miss, is at the very end, do a debrief on all of this. So many leaders I talk to these days, they don't do a debrief. They just finish up with a project and they're right on to the next. Man, just take 30 minutes, get the team together. Hey, what worked, what didn't work, and what could we do better?
Mm.
And whenever you go through all of this, you might find that you put something or a system in process that's going to make you more effective and efficient later on that you can use and you can build on and you can make your whole process better. But so many people are just like, no, we're just going to move on, move on, move on. We don't have time for that. You always have time for a debrief.
Hmm. I think that's definitely an underused tool to like those lessons learned to talk through, to
Right.
like check back yourself and, continuous improvement as we go through. One of the things is you are thinking, as you're explaining the, repeat, respond, preparation. I was trying
Mhm.
to think of like, when you're talking to yourself in the shower, trying to muster up the day, for those of you that, I haven't done that in a while, but some people like work into like suboptimal work environments. And I see how that could like really support them. And like, let's say they have a boss who is either short-sighted or, firefighting or whatever, like preparing yourself for those tough conversations so that you don't get into your fight or flight mode, which I guess is
Right.
incredibly important. It's actually like grounding. Sounds like something I said resonated.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that fight, flight, or freeze.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm one of those people also that, believe it or not, I actually am a shy introvert, and I don't necessarily like hard conversations. But I just had this one boss once where I just knew, like, every time I go talk to this person, something bad is going to happen. It's just how it was, and so I kind of mentally prepare myself. I start to think about, okay, why are we having this meeting? What are the things that I've done? If he says this, what direction will I go? And going through all of that as opposed to just going in blind often helped me be able to respond more quickly, and it definitely helped in the end. He had more respect for me at the end of it because I was so well prepared for the meeting. But yeah, I if you're gonna have some situation like that all the time or you have a tough conversation, kind of mentally go through all of those things first.
Hmm. I mean, again, whether it's a bad boss, whether it's a new job, whether it's a prospect call or what have you, it sounds like that preparation, the training, the grounding yourself. And I always forget the flight or fight. Are you telling somebody to F off? But the freeze part is also, you don't want to be caught flat footed, not knowing what to do. We talked about a lot of stuff. What haven't I asked you? Like, what is something that, we look at again, many later stage career folks, what is something that you would want them to know, or what is something that really sat with you near the tail end of your career that maybe you didn't have early stages?
I think I started to really understand the currency of trust
Mhm.
and how important that is. It's really great when you're on a small team and you have trust. But as you start to go up the ladder and up the ladder, like how much trust really matters to the entire organization. And I've seen it. I've seen whenever you have these leaders who are so trusting and how that filters down through the whole organization and how well that organization works. I've also seen bosses who are like, you know what, trust isn't a big deal to me. I'm not even going to start it. It it's really hard to work in those organizations. And so I would say that if you were, one of the leaders who are listening here, start to think about trust and how much you are showing trust to your entire team. Because realize that if you're able to establish that, you're probably going to have your people are probably going to be a lot happier and they're going to be more efficient and more effective.
Anything that you did in your career that you found really supported you in building trust and contributing to that bank?
Yes. Well, first off, I got called out for not trusting. And so that was kind of a hard because we do these reviews where it's everybody, your bosses, your colleagues, and then also your subordinates. And I actually had a subordinate call me out and say, "Hey, you know what? She doesn't trust us." Whenever she gets really under stress, she holds it all herself and doesn't let us do our job. I was like, wow. Okay, so first off, I was like seeing red and I was angry. And then I realized, oh, yeah, I totally do that. I totally do that. Thank you for calling me out. And once I put that into the forefront of my brain, that whenever I do get stressed out, that I do need to start delegating and letting people do it, actually, my life got better because I was less stressed. I had trained my people, and they wanted to do they wanted to do the job, and they did the job. And it came back and it's like, everything worked out so much better whenever I was started to actually trust. And so I took that and just kept going as I was going up the ladder, just making sure people knew, like, hey, understand that you're trusted. Don't give me a reason to not trust you, but we're going to start off with that trust. And honestly, we had some of the best units out there. We won all kinds of different awards because, people knew that I had their back. So they were able to start experimenting and starting to try new things and trying to make things better. And it really worked. And you could tell that people are like, hey, this is a good command to be in.
Yeah, that sounded like you had to go through the tough part, the self-awareness of, hey, actually, we aren't performing as good as we want. Your default mode was to maybe jump in, or the opposite, just like not say anything. And it wasn't until you actually did one of those reviews that the time and space was created for people to really reflect on where the gap was in your leadership. And even though it might have pissed you off at the time, paraphrasing, that it ultimately made you a better leader.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. I mean, everything changed at that point. I mean, really, everything changed. I felt better, like my troops felt better, and it was just better overall, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the way that you want to be. You want people to be happy. You want people to realize that they can do their job, that they can go out and explore and try new things, and that you have their back. It makes people a whole lot happier, and they're a whole lot more willing to work for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Any last either shared experience or anything else that you want our listeners to know before we finish off, including where they can connect with you and learn more about your book?
Sure. Actually, I'm giving away a free book of just mini quotes. It's like, hey, if you need something during the day, it's like, hey, here's a little book of mini quotes. So it can be found at daretorise.co/quotes. So I'm giving it away for free. Just, pop in there, give me your email, and it'll show up in your email inbox. But you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm always there, always willing. And actually, I like to hear other people's stories. That's actually one of my favorite things. People tell me stories on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm still learning. So share what you have.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jenn. I appreciate you sharing with us today. Whether it's, the little bastard in your head that's not there to support you, creating an opportunity to be reflective and allow people to open up, and then ultimately creating a great environment for everybody to be successful, including oneself. So thank you so much for coming on the Strategy and Leadership Podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, my guest today, Jenn Donahue, one of the things that I'm taking away here is providing the time to reflect and look at oneself to just see, hey, how you doing? The second is preparation. And as a type A person, jumping sometimes into meetings, being able to visualize what's going to happen, to repeat it over and over again, and to train that instinct, and then ultimately, hopefully leading to a more positive bias. If you have prepared as you can be, you come in a lot more cooler, a lot more calmer, and it helps you be as successful as you can be in whatever your performance is, big or small. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to check out those quotes. Check out the book, USA Today bestseller, already in a month. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe. I'm going to get a copy of the book for somebody that I like in my life to support them in being as impactful as they can. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share, and I'll see you next time.